Okay, so we will begin the Hindu editorial discussion, and today's topic of the Hindu editorial discussion article that has came is tenuous stack. What is tenuous? Tenuous means basically the basic meaning of tenuous is let's point it out. What is the meaning of tenuous? Tenuous very weak or slight. Okay, tenuous means very weak or slight. Very weak or slight. It's an adjective. It means that very weak or slight. Tenuous means very weak or slight. Adjective. But this is quite bigger in size. Okay, what you should do, you should just very weak or slight. 10 year stack. This word is quite bigger. I have to reduce the size, minimal size, even less than 8 advanced. I want it just 7. Okay, 10 year stack. 10 years is an adjective. First listen it. It means the very weak or slight. Now it's okay for rest will. What is stack? Stack means टैग टैग का क्या मतलब है? टैग होता है एक स्मॉल शार्प बोर्ड या देखो कई सारे मतलब है टैग के। लेकिन हमारे पास यहाँ पे टैग एक स्मॉल शार्प बोर्ड ही नेल होता है वो, या फिर कारपेंट्री या एडवेंचर्स नॉटिकल जो भी है फास्टन और फिक्स प्लेस विद टैक्स। टैग इज अ नॉटिकल बोथ इन द लोअर बिट और कील कहते हैं उसको। वट एवर, अब समझो पहले कहानी क्या है, टेनियस टैग कैसे हुआ ये आर्टिकल। अब इसमें समझने की कोशिश करते हैं इस पूरे आर्टिकल को। कहाँ है वो? ठीक है, देखिए दी आरबीआई मस्ट बी रेडी टू recalibrate its inflation projections and shift the policy stance. RBI must be ready to recalibrate its inflation projection. RBI has some given some inflation projections, so he has to मतलब RBI has to be ready for to recalibrate to restructure it. India's India's inflation based on the country's consumer price equivalent to 6.01% in January. Okay, ब्रीचिंग द सेंट्रल द इंडियाज जो कंज्यूमर प्राइस इंडेक्स है वो कितना 6.01% बढ़ गया, ब्रीचिंग द सेंट्रल बैंक अपर्स टॉलरेंस लिमिट ऑफ 6%। तो भैया 6% से भी ऊपर बढ़ गया, काफ़ी ज़्यादा इन्फ्लेशन है। वाइल द हेडलाइन नंबर वॉज नो सरप्राइज गिवन दैट द आरबीआई हैड फॉरकास्ट द एक्सेलरेशन। पर ये सरप्राइज नहीं, क्योंकि आरबीआई ने पहले ही कहा था कि ऐसा हो सकता है। द ऑफिशियल डेटा मेरिट स्क्रूटिनी, जो भी ऑफिशियल डेटा के आधार पर बताया था। द प्रोविजनल एस्टीमेट शोज द हिंटरलैंड। हिंटरलैंड मतलब एक दूर दराज पे स्थित इलाके को हिंटरलैंड कहते हैं, या कोई समस्या को हिंटरलैंड कहते हैं। देखते हैं क्या हिंटरलैंड होता है। हिंटरलैंड, ओके, लेट मी सर्च इट। हिंटरलैंड बेसिकली होता है रीजन लाइंग इनलैंड फ्रॉम द कोस्ट, मतलब काफ़ी जो हिंटरलैंड एज अ रीजन वाइज है ना। ऐसा क्यों कहा गया हिंटरलैंड? बेसिकली प्रोविजनल एस्टिमेट शो द हिंटरलैंड, मतलब दूर की क्या स्थिति होगी इसके बारे में शो कर रहा है। विथ इट्स ग्रेटर proportion to the country's poor bore or brunt bore the brunt of rising food prices, with the rural food price inflation to 5.18% from December's 3.99%। देखो भैया 5.18% हो गया, दिसंबर में 3.339% था फूड प्राइस, यही कह रहा है। ऑयल्स एंड फैट्स ऑयल्स एंड फैट्स क्विकेंड द फास्टेस्ट एट 18.7%। मतलब ये ऑयल्स एंड फैट्स मतलब जो ऑयल एडिबल फूड्स हैं, जैसे ऑयल हो गया, कुछ भी ऑयल से रिलेटेड वर्ड्स जो हो गया, तो वो जो है ना वो बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ गए हैं उसकी इन्फ्लेशन। दो द आरबीआई हैड बीन एक्सपेक्टेड टू स्टार्ट द नॉर्मलाइजिंग इट्स पेंडेमिक एरा पॉलिसी स्टांस इन February's monetary policy मीटिंग एंड रीअफर्म इट रिजॉल्व टू कंटेन द इन्फ्लेशन। आरबीआई कहता है कि हम लोग करेंगे फिर मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी मीटिंग और रीअफर्म टू रिजॉल्व टू कंटेन इसको, मतलब कंटेन करेंगे इसको, हम लोग मिनिमाइज करेंगे, रोकेंगे इन्फ्लेशन को। The central bank retained the status quo in order to support the economic growth। मतलब यथास्थिति सेंट्रल बैंक ने बना रखी है अपने जो भी पॉलिसीज में। The governor Shaktikant Das has defended the RBI's projection for the inflation to 4.5% in financial year 23 by citing the base effect as the cause for the headline inflation this fiscal, and predicted that the similar base effect would help to enable the downtrend in the coming months। तो गवर्नर शक्तिदास जो है कांतदास है, उन्होंने क्या कहा कि उन्होंने आरबीआई के जो इस इन्फ्लेशन को, इन्फ्लेशन टू स्लो टू 4.5% इन फाइनेंशियल ईयर 23 में बोला कि 23 में जो होगा स्लो हो जाएगा 4.5%। बेस इफेक्ट एज द कॉज ऑफ फॉर द हायर हेडलाइन इन्फ्लेशन, जो भी बेस इफेक्ट के कारण हुआ, एंड द प्रेडिक्टेड दैट द सिमिलर बेस इफेक्ट वुड हेल्प एनेबल अ डाउन ट्रेंड इन द कमिंग मंथ्स, और यही कारण रहेगा कि बाद में कम हो जाए जो भी आरबीआई की बारी है. The RBI's assumption, however, could unravel a storm of clouds on the horizon intensify. Okay, तो what is unravel? Unravel मतलब कि मतलब ला सकता है क्या? Unravel मतलब undo, twisted, मतलब कि untangle, disentangle, straighten out, resolve, सुलझाना होता है unravel. ठीक है. Unravel मतलब होता है सुलझाना. तो इसका मतलब ये होता है कि जैसे कि बोल रहा है कि the RBI's assumption, however, could unravel if storm clouds on the horizon intensify. ठीक है. Uncertainty over the Ukraine-Russia tension pushed the global crude prices to a 7-year high earlier this week. अब ये कहानी ये भी चल रही है, रशिया और इसमें यूक्रेन में अलग ही लड़ाई है नाटो वगैरह के कारण वो. तो फिर वहाँ पे उसके कारण अभी यूक्रेन एक काफ़ी मतलब इन लोग से ऑयल वगैरह काफ़ी एक्सपोर्ट होता है. तो यहाँ के कारण ऑयल प्राइस भी अब कुछ काफ़ी गिर गए, मतलब बहुत बढ़ गए थे. लिखा है ना, push the global crude price to a 7-year high earlier this week. January's inflation in the transport and communication, which reflects the retail fuel prices, slowed to a mild December but still at 9.36%. Pump prices have stayed static for a while, a likely effect of the poll season. So pump prices are quite static because of the poll that is going to happen. So government has quite done some kind of thing. The center may soon have to allow the oil marketers to pass on the global price increase to consumers. Now who is going to bear this cost of the increase in the consumers, which could spur the inflation further, and it will increase the spursion further, spur increase or cut the excise duty, resulting in the lower revenue for the exchequer, or government could cut some excise duty, but it will see. At this mix, the uneven economic recovery from the pandemic and the outlook gets even more cloudy. Okay, so means the outlook is getting means what is going to more cloudy. It's going to be more unknown. IHS Markets monthly survey of purchasing managers shows that though manufacturing output and the new orders expanded last month, growth rates eased. Uncertainty around the projects seemed from the concerns about the inflationary pressures. Okay, the RBI January survey shows household expect inflation to 10.7% a year ahead. Okay. RBI January survey shows the household expect the inflation at 10.7% a year rate. Though this is a comforting decline from 12.6% seen in November, the significant gap between the RBI's projection and the household's view suggests consumers' perceptions of the price are markedly higher and could likely constrain their spending. Okay, so basically this is all how means this kind of perceptions affect the spending of the earth. This is undesirable as the NSO's advanced estimates of the GDP growth of the current fiscal show private consumption expenditure still lagging the hint the pre-pandemic level of financial year 20. So basically there is less consumption. Okay, that was used to be in financial. Any worsening on this front could challenge the RBI's objective of holding the down interest rates to support the growth. Actually, RBI is holding the down interest rates. Interest rates are less. So if these conditions are means beyond gone this kind of a scope, so it will be challenging for the RBI. With the governor thus asserting the price stability remains the prime focus, the RBI must be ready to rapidly recalibrate its inflation projections and shift the policy stance to its march match its mandate or risk hurting its credibility. So this was the article. Either RBI just do some recalibration into its recalibrate its inflation projection and shift the policy stance. Otherwise, the credibility of the RBI will be affected. This is all the RBI must be ready to recalibrate its inflation projection and shift the policy stance to match its mandate or risk the hurting its credibility. So it is giving some information what had happened in the previous time and how RBI's is how RBI's stance in regarding this 10 year stack. It is kind of weak, very weak or slight. So this was all about the article. Hopefully it was understandable. It was not kind of that difficult. Let's move on to the next article now. Okay. So the next article is this one. Let's zoom it out first. You have to zoom it. Signs of peace. There are signs of peace. There are some signs of peace. Where we are talking about the Russia Ukraine border. We are discussing about the Russian Ukraine border. Signs of peace are there. We will read this article and understand what is written here. Russia pulling back some troops suggest. Just a second. Allow me this. Russia pulling back some troops suggest it sees a potential in Macron's Shaw's proposal. Actually, Macron, who is, do you know Macron? Yes. Macron Shaw's. Actually, Macron, MAC or Macron. Macron is basically this Emmanuel Macron. He's a Macron is a French politician who is a president of France. Okay, and Scholz, who is Scholz? Actually, he is also some political leader. Who is that? So, base Scholz, Olaf Scholz, German politician. Macron is from French, and Scholz is a Olaf Scholz is German politician, Chancellor of the Germany since 8 December 2020. And after Angela Merkel's, he became the chancellor. Russia's pulling back some troops suggests it sees the potential in the Macron-Scholz proposals. Russia's announcement that it is pulling back some troops from the Ukraine borders in the strongest signal is the strongest signal of the de-escalation from Moscow. Okay, so Russia is saying like that. Okay. So Russia has always maintained that. Uh, Russia has always maintained that it had no plans to attack Ukraine. Russia is saying that we have always maintained that we are not in the plan of attacking Ukraine. But the massive troop mobilization, on the three flanks of Ukraine, which included combat aircraft, war airships, and 400 S-400 missile defense systems, had raised the fears of war. Besides the U.S. warnings, the Russian invasion could come any day, and its decision to shut the American embassy in the cave added in the frenzy. Cave added in the frenzy. You understand? This is a idiom, I think so. Cave added in the frenzy. I have to understand what is this. Cave ended in the science of what is cave ended in the frenzy means. Frenzy is derived from the Latin word which means delirious. If you are frenzy, you are certainly delirious. You can be. What is Kiev? Kiev is basically the noun the capital of Ukraine. Okay, Kiev is the capital of Ukraine. Um, on the from the first Russian state. What is how do you use frenzy? Distraught by the death of the wife, the man attacked in the frenzy. Kiev added to the frenzy. Taking the piece. What is frenzy? You have to understand this is Kiev is a basically Kiev is a this is capital of Ukraine means it is a state. Frenzy is basically something. What does frenzy mean? Frenzy means unmad, a state of the period of uncontrolled excitement or the wild behavior. Frenzy. Okay, frenzy. Okay, we got it. Kiev added to the frenzy. The Russian approach appeared to have been rooted in the building military pressure around the Ukraine to gain the diplomatic leverage in talks with the West. So Russia's tactic was to just to build a military pressure, so as to gain the diplomatic leverage. Means Russia wants some means diplomatic benefits. In the last few weeks, European leaders, Hungary's Viktor Orban, France Emmanuel Macron, and the Germany's Olaf Scholz had visited Moscow. Of these, the diplomatic interventions by Mr. Macron, who called for respecting the Russian security concerns and sought to revive the Minsk agreement on Ukraine civil strife. Actually, there was a Minsk agreement of peace. There were most many kind of things were written. Civil strife and Mr. Scholz, who said the Kiev that the Ukraine's entry in the NATO was not on the agenda right now, was significant. Okay. Their talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin opened a diplomatic path towards de escalation. It's too early to say that the crisis is over. The complex issue is rooted in Russia's security concerns and the NATO's expansionary open door policy with no quick solutions. Okay. But the suggestions from the talk, Russia and the West have at a point to formula for the peace. Russia's three concerns are, what are the Russia's concerns? Okay, you should note it. One, it does not want its neighbors Georgia and Ukraine to be the member of NATO. So Russia primary concern, it does not want the neighbors of the Georgia and Ukraine to be the member of the NATO. Second, to it wants the NATO read the US to roll back its military presence and reduce from the Eastern Europe and the Black Sea. This is the second concern of the Russia. Okay, this is the second concern of the Russia. And now the what is third concern? Three, it wants the Ukraine crisis, the civil conflict between the Kiev and the Russia, backed by separatists uh, backed separatists in Donbass, to resolve through the Minsk process. Okay, these are the three concerns Russia Russia had. Okay, in the talks with Mr. Putin, U.S. President Joe Biden has already said the U.S. does not have any plan to deploy offensive weapons or permanent combat troops to Ukraine, and that Washington was open to reducing the drills and the missiles in the Eastern Europe on a reciprocal basis. Okay, very well. Now what ahead? Mr. Macron has taken the steps to revive the Minsk II deal to address the Ukraine's internal crisis. And then Mr. Scholz practically ruled out the Ukraine joining NATO on the foreseeable future. Put together, this is a comprehensive package that could accommodate the Russia's security concerns, the West fears of Russian aggression. Okay, very. So these all things are being means meant. Moscow's decision to pull back the troops partially suggests that it sees the potential in these proposals. Russia might Russia might keep some troops on the border to retain the pressure, but the obvious next step is to take these proposals to solid agreements through the diplomacy. The West and the Russia should take the road aimed at the finding a last solution to Europe's most dangerous security crisis. So this was all about the article, means what is the science of the peace, how Russia is invading Ukraine, what happens now. Russia has agreed. What was the Russia's concern? The Russia concern was that it doesn't want the neighbors Georgia and Ukraine to be the members of the NATO. It wants the NATO to roll back its military presence and the details of the Eastern Youth. So this was all about the article. And the third, that it doesn't want the Ukraine crisis, a civil conflict between the Kiev and the Russia. And we were confused here. What is the Kiev of frenzy? So Kiev of frenzy is basically, it's not an idea. Kiev is he added to the frenzy. Frenzy something is not good, and if something Kiev added embassy in the Kiev added to the frenzy. American embassy in the Kiev added. So this was all about the article, and overall the article is understandable, and nothing is very much that kind of that it needs so much of efforts. It was understandable article.